All right, my name is Magdalin Livingston, and I use she, they pronouns. I'm an art therapy student at the Toronto Art Therapy Institute. I'm also a registered psychotherapist qualifying, teacher. I love to read books, and that's a bit about me. And today I'm chatting with Shae. Shae, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's so great to be with you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. My name is Shae Seqaqkind Anthony. I'm a member of the Turtle Clan of the Delaware Nation, and my grandfather is from Six Nations of the Grand River. I'm currently on unceded Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh lands. I'm also a practicing artist, art therapist, registered psychotherapist qualifying, and art educator. I'm super passionate about fostering creativity in people of all ages, and I believe that creativity is the closest thing we have to magic. Um, yeah, I'm so happy to be with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise, and I see maybe a little friendo in the back too.
Oh, this is my cat, Vera. She'll be around.
Vera, you said?
Her full name's Veronica, so her name takes many forms depending on the day.
Love that. Yes, very excited to be in conversation with you too, Shae. And I'm also really excited that you mentioned like the magical quality of what you do, and I hope to hear a bit more about that as well. But to start us off, can you tell us a bit about your current practice in art therapy, what settings you practice in, what you find most exciting or meaningful?
Yeah, so I currently work at a really special place called Dr.Peter Centre. And Dr. Peter was a medical doctor who spread awareness of his own experience with AIDS through a CBC TV series in the early 90s. And for people that don't know, like back in the 80s and 90s, AIDS patients were basically abandoned by government and health officials, and they were treated like they were toxic. And they were isolated in hospital wards, and they weren't given the care that they should have received. And so during that time, the LGBTQ plus community stepped up to the plate, and through activism and mutual aid, they cared for each other. And lesbians were really instrumental in organizing blood drives and caring for people in their homes and showing up when no one else did. And so Dr. Peter Centre, where I work now, is this legacy of Dr. Peter, who wanted all patients who live with HIV and AIDS to receive support and receive it in a really holistic way. And so at our center, we're providing food, we have nursing care, we have a safe injection site, we have counseling, music therapy, and then art therapy. And that's where I come in as an art therapist. So I'm running a group studio every day, and I'm also offering one-to-one sessions with people.
Okay. So is it, you said you're running it as an open studio, right?
Every day, 10:30 to 1, there's an open art studio.
And what do you find are some either differences or similarities between the open studio space and then like the one-to-one practice?
And studio is amazing because I feel like you really see the support and the relationships that are formed with people, and everybody is self-directed. That's always the way that the studio has been run, and I'm coming after many other art therapists who have held this position. So it's really fascinating to see the way that people are able to begin a project and it guides them into the next one and the next one and the next one. Um, and also to see the way that people use the materials that are offered and to witness the creativity that folks have, because so often I'll be working with somebody and they choose a material to work with and it's transformed in a way that I would never think of using it. That's powerful. It's really powerful to also witness people in the space caring for each other and offering their opinions. And I feel so lucky to witness the way that things are done and how each day is so different, because you really never know how the studio will be, who will show up, and what kind of day it will be.
Yeah, it really seems like it has a sense of aliveness. I mean, not to say that one-on-one doesn't, but like almost like its own ecosystem that's just, yeah, changing, and there's that magic quality again too, and it's like alive. So that's really cool.
So funny you say that, it's true. And actually, last week, one of the participants brought in all of these tobacco plants that he had guerrilla planted, which means that he just found open space in the city. He put the seeds there, and then he watched them grow. And when they were done growing, he went back to all these spaces. He harvested the tobacco leaves, brought them into the studio, and we spent the studio hours tying that tobacco so that we could dry it and use it for ceremony and for offerings. And it was just this wonderful experience of waking up in the morning and reflecting on the day and thinking, wow, how amazing and how lucky am I to be able to witness this practice and be able to help out in tying tobacco leaves in the art studio.
That's beautiful. I guess rewinding a little bit, what would you say has brought you to the field of art therapy? And were there any hopes behind your decision to enter this training, approaching this field?
Yeah, so I went through a period of loneliness when I was in my early 20s, which I think is something that a lot of 20-year-olds go through. These moments where you're this young person in the world and you're trying to figure out how you fit and where you fit and what your life path is. And I had always been an artist. I had always loved art. Um, but what kind of saved me from that loneliness was that I answered this call through this place called Our Place, which is a drop-in center. And they were looking for an art facilitator, a volunteer art facilitator. And I thought, oh, this is what I need to do. Like, I'm gonna apply and I'm gonna volunteer. And things really changed for me there. I found a lot of meaning in making art alongside other people who didn't necessarily play by the rules of society. And I met two of my best friends through that role. And I started to see the power of art making for myself and for other people. I thought, oh, there's really something here. Like, this is powerful, and people are showing up. And the staff there would say, you know, when the art group is going, there's a different energy in here. Things change. And because we're just one table in this giant space, there's lots of things going on, but it didn't matter where people were sitting. It was the fact that the art studio was happening that kind of changed the entire environment and made things feel calmer and made people interested to even like stop by the table and say, hey, what are you guys doing? And so from that, I went on and I kind of had that realization. And I started to work on the downtown east side. I moved to Vancouver and I became a support worker on the downtown east side, working with women. And I learned so much on that role, but I also had this feeling that I just wanted to do something more. I didn't want to just let people, I wanted to connect to people in a way that could help them to heal. And I wanted to facilitate that. And I didn't think that the support work role could allow me to do that. And so that's when I decided, okay, I want to be an art therapist. And I enrolled at TATI.
Interesting, hearing that your journey starts with this feeling of isolation or like loneliness. And I guess I'm just curious, did those things come up in the open studio space too? Because then it almost feels like a direct contrast, like you're in community, you're with so many other people. And I don't necessarily mean for you specifically, but I mean sort of like as a theme, how does that come up and maybe how do you approach that?
My loneliness was my struggle, but it's so many people's struggle. And because the people I work with come from all sorts of walks of life, I think that it's very true that people probably are dealing with loneliness or some other tough feeling. Um, and so that's why my goal with the open studio is to let people arrive however it feels best for them. Because I recognize how many challenges or barriers people might face, even in just getting to the center in the morning. Like maybe they had to be on a super crowded bus, or maybe they got kicked out of their shelter at 6 a.m. and they really just needed to sleep a couple more minutes, but they didn't have that choice. There's so many things that there's so many physical things that people might be dealing with. And then on top of that, like you said, those other difficult emotions like loneliness or feeling depressed, feeling sad. Um, so yeah, if someone wants to sit in the studio but they don't feel ready to make art, that's okay with me. And if someone wants to fall asleep, like they're working on something and they fall asleep, that's okay with me too. Because I have a lot of time. Like I'm lucky that that studio runs every day, 7 days a week. And so I want to build a relationship with somebody on their own terms. And and that means that we're kind of accepting that people might come and it's not going to be about making art right at the beginning. Getting through the door is the first step. Coming in for a minute, walking around and saying, "No, I'm good. I'm not making any art today." That's okay. Um, because when I first started working as an art therapist, I think I had shame about doing art therapy right. Like I'm an art therapist, and so it means making art in a therapeutic setting, and it's going to look like this, and it has to go this way. And the longer I work, the more I realize that being flexible and empowering people and showing up the way that they are is the most important thing to me. Yeah. And another thing is that the studio has become a place to mend things. Like we repair shoes, we've got shoe glue on hand, we're sewing backpacks, like those kinds of things that seem less art forward or maybe aren't as obvious as like therapeutic art intervention. I think that's the most powerful thing is like helping people mend the things that are fundamental to their life.
Can I ask, like, I might have my own thoughts too or guesses, but could I ask why you think it's so powerful? Because I think I might have had maybe similar feelings or experiences of, being taught in a certain way, and having certain expectations of what art therapy is going to look like, or like the right art therapy will look like. But in practice, it can be so much more. It can be so much different. It can shift in such like really wonderful ways. So I just, yeah, if you could speak more to like that powerfulness of how it's different.
I mean, the practice of mending is so incredible, and it says so much about how we value our things. And I think that people who are poor are really smart about how they care for their things. And I think that these kind of pieces of our lives for a lot of people, like wearing a backpack that carries their sleeping bag or wearing shoes that are sturdy and like aren't going to give them blisters. Those are more about the physical body, but the practice of mending them and supporting somebody and mending something that's fundamental to their life says so much. Like I care about people and I want them to be comfortable in the world. And I know that this world is not set up for the people I work with to be comfortable. That is the last thing that is prioritized. And so the art studio accommodates mending because it's fundamental to the well-being of the people that I work with. And it's also just this act of love to repair something and says so much about like living in this capitalist society where so often our default is to just throw something away.
Yeah, powerful. So then I guess kind of going from those learnings that you've had working in the communities that you do or with the communities that you do, what do you feel are the shifts or the movements that are needed in the art therapy training and professional communities to better serve or support Indigenous communities, the communities that you serve? Yeah.
This is such a tough question to answer. This is a big question. Yeah, I think a basic starting point is that people can, of course, know the lands that they live on, and they can practice building a relationship to that land. Robin Kammerer says that when you know that the land loves you, it gives you this feeling. But when you love the land back, she doesn't say it exactly like this, but when you know that you love the land back, it allows you to mobilize and fight for it. And I think that we do. We need to fight for our earth and our land. And the first part is knowing how to love the land and how to connect to the land. And I think that the next step then is knowing what nations are sharing those lands with us. And then knowing, okay, what do those nations need? What are they requesting? What are they talking about? Because Indigenous people have stewarded the land for a time immemorial. And so connecting those things is going to allow us all to mobilize for that fight, which we do need to do, like more than ever, because of climate change. We need to do that. We need to listen to Indigenous folks and listen to the nations. Like if you're living on those nation lands, then we need to honor the things that they're asking us to do. And then, of course, the deeper work is unlearning racism, unlearning the things that we've been taught, unlearning our shame, because shame is driving so much of this stuff, and locating how we benefit from these systems that we live in. Yeah. Even if we consider ourselves anti-racist, there's so many ways that we passively endorse those concepts or actively endorse them and not realize we're doing it. And so every day it's that practice of waking up and reflecting and saying, how can I do better? And how can I build a relationship to myself where I'm critical, but I'm not getting down. I'm not letting shame take over, but really examining those things. I think the practice of shadow work and unlearning shame is a really great thing for us all to do as art therapists and as student art therapists.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I'm just thinking about what you said before as well, and like how the mending strikes me as a disruption to this shame that I think is, also coming in from capitalism, from, ongoing colonialism. So it's interesting how art therapy can become a disruption then to these things, or the art therapy space, the creative process, the open studio. And I don't know if you had ideas about that or what you think about like this idea of disrupting and art, or even open studio and disruption.
Yeah, I mean, even what you said there, like the idea of the mending practice and the disruption, it's visually disrupting. Like capitalism or like a capitalist ideal is that everything you own looks new. Everything is like is manufactured and given to you. There's no personality in it. And so every repair you make, like maybe it's okay if the repair is obvious because it's yours and you love it and you use it. And so I think that that's a really powerful disruption. And I think that, going back to the AIDS activists, they did such a good job in the 80s and 90s of stepping up through art and disrupting and saying, this is what our community is going through. You can't look away. They made all those quilts and they laid them down and they said, this is what's going on. These are all the people we're losing. Like, that is so powerful. And I can't help but think about the Palestinian people and how there's so many lives being lost, and how art has been so symbolic through this last year and a bit of representing those people and becoming this symbol that allows the rest of us to understand what's going on and to share it and put it out in the world.
For sure. And what do you hope for the future of art therapy then in our shared worlds? What are some things that we can do now to practice this future into being? I think you kind of already are, touching on some things, but would you add anything?
I just believe so deeply in art therapy as a tool for healing, and I believe it's a tool for liberation. And it allows us to envision these different worlds and possibilities. And that's something that Ursula K. Le Guin talked about, is like the ability to imagine something different. I think we're there. Like, I think that we need to imagine a world that is different from what we've got right now. And so art making is this tool where we do have that freedom, and we can dream, and we can create our own worlds. And it also seems to me that we are in suffering times. A lot of people are suffering. And through that, we need to keep hope alive. Like, they want us to feel tired. They want us to feel like we can't come together or that we're isolated. And more than ever, art building, art making, and envisioning a different future is what we need. Like, we cannot let that make us hide away. We can get through this, and we have to be together. And yesterday I was listening to this podcast, Adrian Murray Brown, and the guest, he's a Palestinian man. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but he was saying that he fell in love this year, and he's feeling like he's planning his future with this person that he loves. And that even though he's going through all this struggle and witnessing all of these terrible things, that love persists. Like, we keep on going. I think art can inspire, and I also have a hope for new art therapists entering the field. Like, I want them to know that there's room here for them in the profession, and that they're on the right path, and that I believe in them, because I think that it can feel tough to enter the field. Like, it can feel daunting. And I really, really believe that there's space for all of us. And yeah, if you're a new art therapist, I believe in you. Like, we are powerful and the world needs us. So I'm here for you.
Absolutely. I feel like as a Black person, as an Anglo-Indian person of color, I have such complicated feelings about like the meeting place between like history and then also looking into the future and imagining different futures. There's just such a lot of complicated feelings in that. And at the same time, really resonate with what you're saying about, art as helping us to imagine that new possibilities are tangible and they're necessary and can be imagined. And I'm also thinking about how wonderfully you started this with the history of the place that you work in. So I guess I'm just kind of like having history and future on my mind, and want to know if you have anything else you wanted to add in terms of like art, keeping a record of the ways in which that it can be disruptive, that it can help imagine new futures, that sort of thing.
I think that Patricia actually gave me this idea of looking into the past at somebody who is doing or thinking the same things, or, someone that you just you feel like you can connect to. Like even if that person is gone, they are still there. And if they put work out, like if they were a writer, if they were an activist, that connection is still so important because it's it's a place where you don't have to feel that feeling of loneliness. And we can learn so much from the past, and we should keep that tie because we are in this great forgetting. Like it seems that we're often forgetting things and not learning from the experiences that we've had. And so it's very powerful to be able to connect in that way to AIDS activists from the 80s and 90s, or a writer who's gone now, but just had the most incredible ideas. Um, those are the threads that bolster us and can and put us forward. And there's this book I have by Chief Dan George, and it's all of these writings of his. And it gives me so much strength to flip through those pages. And I keep that book in the open studio because I think it's important to take it out, and I put it on the table and people pick it up and they read his words. And that's the strength that we need. We need our ancestors behind us, and we need to remember the things that they already learned. Because otherwise, I think we're just working backwards, or we're starting from scratch. And also, that goes with like the same idea of starting something. Like if you have an idea, chances are there's someone out there working towards that idea as well. And so, like looking out into the world to see whose hand you can grab is really powerful, instead of thinking, okay, this is new and exciting and I'm the one to start it, and then just building from, the foundation up.
Yeah, definitely. We need to remember, we need to reclaim. Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to add onto what you have already said?
No, I really was recently, uh, I feel really struck by a book I recently read called Unlearning Shame by Devin Price. And I recommend it to people who are interested in looking at shame and how it informs their life. And I think too, like shadow work is such a powerful tool because in reading that book, it just helped me realize that we need to not point at each other, but hold systems accountable. And that's the real work, is like holding these systems accountable and not getting too tied up in looking at individuals.
How would you describe that connection between shadow work, shame, and then holding institutions accountable?
We are able to look at the deeper and maybe not as nice pieces of ourselves, the pieces that make us feel ashamed, or the desires that we have that we feel like we can't reach. It allows us to have this deeper understanding of ourselves as a whole. I think when we have that understanding, we stop looking at other people and pointing at behaviors that bother us, or for whatever reason elicit a response. And we start to realize that even if it's true that they have this thing that they've done that bothers us, it's likely not about us. It's likely not that they set out in their day to cut us off at a red light or say something that hurt our feeling. It's probably not about us. But the way that people are informed, or like the way that they feel, has a lot to do with how our society and our systems run. And so when we work to make our systems better, it's better for all of us. And we need to target the people that have the power to do that, or the systems that have the power to change those things. And so, the shadow work, that's a Jungian concept, and it's about those deeper pieces of ourselves. But the shame ties so strongly into that because our society does teach us to feel ashamed from a very young age. And it does put a lot of the onus on us to change things. Oh, you have a problem? Well, this is how you fix it. Okay, well, how about the way that we have things set up now and how it's not working for us and what we want to change? Those are the things that I'm interested in, is making some big shifts for all of us.
I think that's something I'm most excited about as well, as someone who hasn't graduated yet, is going to be entering the field hopefully soon, is that there seems to be, thank you, there seems to be a shift, I think, pioneered by Indigenous folks, Black folks, queer folks, like, to move away from, the problem is within you as an individual, and sort of, and I'm thinking of mending again as a metaphor, like a beautiful metaphor for this, of like mending or coming back to whole picture and the macro systems that need healing, that need changing. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing that wisdom.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me for this conversation. I always feel like it's so exciting to talk about because when you say it out loud, it kind of connects the pieces that make sense together. And it's a good reminder for me. Like, I'm like, these are the things that we have. These are the tools that we have. And yeah, it inspires me to talk to you. I'm like, yeah, we got this. Like, we're here and we're doing it. We're going to go forward with it.
Absolutely.